Welcome to the show, Philip Ittner, live from Kiev without power. I can tell because your Olga of Kiev poster does not have her twinkly lights. That was always our sign back in the beginning of this, in the very beginning. That was the thing I always watched for when you were on, right? Because, and
Yeah.
so what's currently happening? Is it, did they hit a power station near you, or is it out for safety reasons or rationing?
Well,
What's happening?
I mean, they. Uh, how's my audio, by the way? I don't know if I'm coming through on my
No, you sound good.
earbuds are on the
No, you're
phone.
you're hot.
Okay.
I can hear you. You're good.
Uh, the Russians started an attack on Kiev last night at around 1 in the morning and lasted for about 7 hours, and it's just constant. Uh, I had at least two, maybe three Shaheeds fly over and you can hear them because they
Hmm.
sound like, it's the old, they sound like mopeds, the old, like a little,
Yeah,
you know, little V8 or something. I don't know.
yeah.
Um,
Flying lawnmowers.
anyway, yeah, flying lawnmowers, exactly right. And so, uh, that's a very distinctive sound. So I
Yeah.
heard at least a couple of them over my apartment, which is very rare because I live in the center of the city, and normally
They don't get that far
uh,
in.
other air defense, as you get closer and closer to the center of the city, gets more and more intense.
Right.
So the fact that they're getting through, it's arguably apparently down to they're using a new technique where the Shahid flies way too high for their usual defensive measures, which is basically just throwing a lot of lead in the air. When it comes to a Shahid,
Right.
when it comes to a cruise missile, they might use something bigger, like maybe even a Patriot missile system.
Right.
But for Shahids, they just fire a lot of lead in the air and hope that they hit it.
Hmm.
It doesn't fly very fast anyhow, but what they're apparently doing is they've changed it to fly at altitude. So at a higher altitude, and then they get closer to whatever city they're trying to hit, and then it'll nose dive into the city. And
Right.
clearly, they targeted, like they have done in other years in the past. They're targeting electricity. Um, obviously, to get a situation like this. So I mean, I've got, as most Ukrainians do now, you have candles,
Hmm.
you have water, because they're not just going for electricity; they are going to go for the water system. I keep a, for my old California days of kind of, uh,
Having earthquake,
disaster,
being earthquake ready.
yeah, or a
Yeah.
wildfire or something like that. So
Hmm.
I fill up I got a tub filled with water right now, just in case the water goes out and I need to. My oven doesn't work because it's electric, but the stovetop does because it's gas. So I can light that with electric lighter and then kind of cook a ramen or something like that on the
Hmm.
rooftop, on the stovetop.
Hmm.
Uh, I've got backup after backup of little
Right.
4G. Oh, I just showed my phone number. That's great. That was
Hmm.
smart. Uh,
I don't think it was
uh,
clear, so I think we'll be all right. We'll
no, I
we'll
don't
clip
think
it
it was
later.
clear out there. I think I'm okay. And also, it's a hotspot.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Right.
Uh, and then, of course, I have it on my phone as well. And I took out contracts that are, unlimited data usage month to month sort of thing. We all live off of
Hmm.
enormous batteries like
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
which is all already, since the power went out for me about uh, 2 hours ago.
Hmm.
No, 2.5 hours ago now, and I'm down to 83% on my largest. And then I've got another one that's running the LED. I've got another one that's running the LED, so that so I have some backlighting there and
Yeah.
some
I think that shows
some
class
color.
on your part.
Well,
So yeah.
you got to show respect,
Yeah.
you know,
To Olga.
to
Right.
Sophia. to Olga, St. Olga. Then I've got, I mean, for maximum
Right.
uh, coverage, if I needed to plug in my heater
Mm-hmm.
or my refrigerator, I could run that off of this for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Uh, so we all make accommodations to it. I mean, it makes you want to go out less because I live, as lots of buildings are in Kiev. It's a multi-story building, so you don't want to be walking up, story after story in darkness,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to get caught in the elevator. So there's that. But their whole intent, their intent is twofold. Well, there are multiple reasons, but
Mm-hmm.
as far as Ukrainians are concerned, their intent is twofold. One, keep us terrified, um, keep us discombobulated because I didn't sleep all night last night. I was
Mm.
up all night, and so I've been doing little cat naps all day when the air raid siren is, and now my body clock is all screwed up. I
Sure.
don't know if I'm coming or,
Sure.
and that's on purpose. That's the idea. That's
Yeah.
the idea. Is to screw you up that, and then secondly to deprive us of electricity and heating and things like that, so that life is actually really difficult
Mm-hmm.
to conduct. It's all based on demoralizing and terrifying the Ukrainian people, and uh, that's their intent. It's not going to work,
Right.
but it is exhausting. That's for sure.
Well, that, and again, you're right. That's the goal. That's it
Yeah.
clearly. So a couple of things. I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me in the last little bit, and I mean, besides Russia, bombing Kyiv and killing a family of four, and including two children, bombing Odessa and killing a family there, bombing a kindergarten, like I don't think. I think there's a certain level of after a while. I think part of the war fatigue that happens is people tend to disconnect from the damage and what Russia is actively doing to another country for no other reason than seizing it. It's heartbreaking to grasp that every day, all day, and so I appreciate you for being there in the midst of all that because it's unavoidable, and so these actions that they are taken are not something that's happening in a TV show and will be wrapped up like a TV show like Trump thinks. Trump thinks
Mhm.
this is like a binge series and that there's some big heroic moment coming that will solve it for him, that he will blindside the circumstance and providence will reign and whatever. But the long-term plan of the Russians, specifically the Kremlin, and I would argue Putin to Lavrov and whoever else will run things if Putin keels over, is the continued seizure of the old provinces of Russia, the old territories, and one of the things that really stood out, and I watched for the language and how they talk about these fucking things, that in their response to Trump's initial thing, like that was going to be talked about at Budapest, Sergei Lavrov said a bunch of shit, obviously, about what they're going to do. He goes, they don't need a ceasefire that, quote, leads nowhere, which means they need to be a ceasefire where they're given land and they can entrench, but a long-term stable peace, which is just borrowing language from the Gaza fight for his own purposes. He doesn't actually give a fuck about that because, again, this is just giving them time to reload. And he wants to get to, quote, the root causes of the conflict, which he identified as NATO's eastward expansion. And by the way, NATO is a voluntary group. No one is pushed or forced or cajoled into joining NATO. It's the exact opposite. There are more countries that want to join, and they are not allowed for a myriad of reasons, including having border disputes, which is why the Moldova taking the land there, why the taking of the Donbass is to stop that, to force them into a situation where it would break the rules to do it. But the part that stood out to me was that the changes that they obviously want, which is largely bullshit, was he wanted a change. They said Russia wants a change to, quote, NATO's open door policy. And what that stood out to me, that's different than Ukraine can't join. That's nobody else. Stop allowing people to join because they want to or need to. That means Estonia.
And
That means
we get to sign off on it.
yes, exactly.
We get to be the signature. We get to be the guys that decide.
Yeah, which they can have as soon as they dismantle the CSTO. I'm kidding, but that change, that broadness of that statement, which is not Ukraine just can't be in NATO. It's literally no one else can ever join NATO. Period. No matter what we do to them, and largely because they know, because of Sweden and Finland joining, that countries close to them would be stupid not to join NATO when this all settles out. It would be political and civil malpractice in all of those countries to not join NATO if you border Russia, because you're just not safe, proven by this attack. But what he wants is he wants to guarantee that they change the policy so that nobody can join going forward, so that they can push into these other ways. And the Estonian leadership is like, we're next. Within the next 7 years, whatever the fuck shakes down in them taking this land, if they get a chunk of land, they're coming for us. That's what they've said. And that statement of closing, eliminating NATO's open door policy, which again goes against this entire mythology that NATO is expanded eastward like a fucking marching army, instead of it's a voluntary group of treaty nations. It brings that lie to fore because that's how it operates. It's an open door. You can join if you want to, which is what, again, in the NATO-Russian founding agreement in 1997, is exactly what Russia agreed to. If people want to join NATO, if a country wants to join, they're allowed. If they don't want to join, they don't have to. Cool. They signed on to that in 97. And then they, subsequently attacked Ukraine and Georgia and Chechnya. Yeah, drives me crazy. Like that stood out to me as really telling.
Well, they don't. They do not care about the rule of law. They say they do. They will say it on the global stage because they know it. They can twist and turn it to their benefit.
Right.
But fundamental to their way of life, and I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback on this, but fundamental to their system, let's say, is that law is not to be used. Law is not. We have our image of the statue of law. That symbolizes
right.
law. With the scales and the sword.
Hold on, we're getting a little bit of slow feed.
It's blind.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a device.
Right.
Used. Yeah, but powerful against power that fails. That's one thing. Alternatively, from the Moscow's perspective, this is something to be used as a manipulation device, as something to instrument my will. So they don't give a shit about law or about international law. They look internally within Russia to really look at how they feel about law. All of this is just pretext. It's just power. It's just power. They want their colony back. They want Ukraine as their primary colony, as their first most important colony, and part of their origin story, which they tell themselves because of Kievan Rus coming down the waterways of river, the Vikings that came down the waterways of river of Europe, establishing the basis of their entire culture, religion, language, music, everything. It's deeply tied to who they see themselves as in their self-identity. So they cannot have a Ukraine that is separate from Moscow, because Moscow is the one that tells the narrative. To allow Kiev to tell the narrative would be in contradiction to them, and they can't abide that. So yeah, I mean, they didn't mind Finland and Sweden joining in. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why? No,
Why
God, I
Ukraine?
really am tired.
Yeah, it's
Finland.
okay.
He was. Yeah. Why does Ukraine? Why does Ukraine? Well, because Ukraine is more than just territory or geopolitics or military positioning, strategic positioning. It's just deeply entwined in their identity and their sense of self. And we've said it many times. I know a lot of Ukrainians don't like the equivalency, but it is the abusive partner in a relationship who says, "I'm going to beat you into loving me again.
Right.
I will
Mm-hmm.
force you to love me again." And it's just not going to happen.
Right.
That ship has sailed. It is to keep that example or that analogy is that once an abused there is once an abusive partner lays hands on the
Mm-hmm.
victimized
Mm-hmm.
partner, you can't take that back. That's a bell that can't be unrung.
Right.
Now, all sorts of pathology, as we all know, we've all gone through it, or we've all seen our loved ones or known people who have gone through abusive relationships. It's not as easy just walking out the door, but there's another red line. There's a Rubicon that gets crossed when the abuse takes the kids, walks out the door, gets a taxi, goes to a shelter. And once I know that it does happen that people go. It's not a perfect analogy, but there is another Rubicon, and that is we're not going back. The
Yeah.
vast majority of Ukrainians hold the mentality that we have broken free and we are not going back.
Mm-hmm.
That that's another again bell that cannot be unrung. So if they think that they could bomb people into submission, they're wrong. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to bomb this country into saying, "Oh, you know what? Right, you're absolutely right, Moscow. We're going to bend the knee to you." And
Right.
that's why all this talk that Trump doesn't even understand in his meeting with you Zelensky and all these subsequent and I'm in air quotes saying negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, are kind of doomed to failure because it doesn't seem as though they understand that Ukrainians are just not going to give up resisting, and they're not going to give up their sovereignty, and they're not going to give up territory.
Right.
Which I mean, if you don't know, if for those who don't know, the territory, Moscow is actually asking as part of its negotiation. And it seems that Trump is following suit.
Mm-hmm.
Is just give up because the Russians are going to take it eventually anyhow. So just give up for
Right.
peace
That's
or
what
give up for a
Marjorie Taylor
ceasefire
Greene
or
was
whatever.
saying 2 years
Not
ago.
right. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, because it's a Moscow talking point that
Right.
people who are susceptible to their psychological warfare fall into it. I mean, it's the old dress thing of, is it gray or is it blue sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's all how you kind of look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but Moscow knows that very well. And so it puts out the narrative that finds traction with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene
Right.
or, take your pick.
Yeah.
Even
Vance,
within
Josh
his own
Hawley.
family,
Right. Yeah.
even the president himself with his whole, like it's an inevitability. The problem is for those who don't know that the remaining territory that exists in this stretch, these provinces, these oblasts out
Mm-hmm.
east are the stronghold. They were built for 10 years. They've been building defensive positions in
Yeah.
this part of the country because it for a couple of reasons, but one, it leads up to Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. And so you could come at it from both south and east and that would compromise Kharkiv's security. It also breaks out of the Donbass, which is a very different topography than other parts of the country. There's lots of sloping ground and open spaces and easily defendable factory towns, industrial towns. And so there's this string of primarily three cities, but all about the 100,000, 150,000 person mark. But they're all factory towns. They're all where Soviet Ukraine used to make tanks and tractors and shovel coal and refine steel. And they're just death traps for the Russians. And if the Russians, the Russians would have to expend vast amounts of money, material, to take them. So what better way to just jump over that than to say, oh, well, it's part of the rest of the province, so you might as well give it to us as well. And then all those defenses that
Right.
Ukraine's been building up since 2014 would just be ceded to Moscow. And the Ukrainians are just never going to accept that. But what that allows Putin and Trump, I was
Yeah.
going to say Trump, but I flipped the tongue and said Putin.
Sure.
What that allows Trump to do is say, "Oh, the Ukrainians are being unreasonable. They don't really want peace or whatever it is." And that's simply not true. I mean, we're sitting here in the dark, and families are getting bombed out of their apartment buildings. I mean, nobody wants this war to end more than Ukrainians. But they also know that if that happens, then it's only a matter of time. They'll keep coming because,
Right.
again,
Well, that's why they want
this
to
is all
end.
part of their
That's why they want to end the open door policy.
identity as empire.
That is very different than we can't have Ukraine in there because of they have a border with us and it makes us feel nervous. Like, well, Finland's in now anyway, so that ship has sailed as well. Like, they have a bigger border than Ukraine does. I want to show you something real quick if I could. That's this image right here is an apartment that's been hit by a drone strike. The difference is it's from Poland. This is one of the places that the Russian drones flew into and struck an apartment building in Poland. And that's indicative of, I think, where we find ourselves with what the Russians intend to do. The other thing too is that when they talk about how, like, I don't know, that it's odd to me that the maggots, specifically the America First, freedom, First Amendment, Second Amendment crowd, again, there is no Second Amendment in Russia. Like, the gun ownership is, all but non-existent. People smuggling guns in usually use them to kill their own families. It's terrible. But the Russian servers, the servers for Telegram are in Russia. Even though the guy who started is now, I think, was arrested in France. And he, Telegram this is like the last spike where it jumped back on and then it came back off again. But the Russians are shutting down Telegram large portions of the day, but for stuff that they want sent out. So these are basically think of this as like a propaganda spike. And then everything else is just shut down. Images won't load, videos won't load, that kind of stuff in Russia. Outside of Russia, it still largely works. That's very telling when they're hiding the conversation inside their own country. This is something that specifically happens in China a lot, where they'll let stuff get out that makes it look like they have an open conversation in to the rest of the world, but when they inside the country, the conversation is eliminated. And this is just yet another in a long series of developments in Russia, where they're having to control the narrative inside their own country.
Well, yeah, and then let things like Telegram go out into the world with the narrative that they want,
Right.
which is part of their information warfare campaign. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's they know exactly what they're doing. Again, it's frustrates me, all these guys who have been looking at the Zelensky meeting from last weekend, and maybe there's going to be a Budapest meeting, and maybe there's going to be this, that, or the other thing. No, none of this is all a game, and I don't know if Trump is either in on it and is helping to just basically keep
he's the one tapping
grinding
it
the
along,
gear,
in theory.
just. He could be working in conjunction and being like, okay, we'll just keep kicking the can down the road, and hopefully, Vlad, you can make a breakthrough, or the Ukrainians will, break, or I don't know, whatever they are thinking will happen.
Right.
But he could either be in on it, or he's being played like a fiddle, and neither one is good. So, I mean, the idea that they would go to Budapest, it does look like the Budapest. I don't think the Budapest meeting is going to happen. But
No.
to pick, of all places, to pick Budapest, where the memorandum was signed, which would guarantee Ukrainian sovereign land in exchange for giving up their nukes. I mean, that is specific.
Yeah.
That is absolutely 100% specific to sticking it in the eye of the Ukrainians, and also to the kind of the West in general, by we broke you, we made you show yourselves to be the hypocrites that you are, and ha ha ha, so we can laugh at you. And of course, Trump doesn't know any of this. And all the negotiations, again, air quotes, negotiations. I firmly believe by the Trump administration it's all performative. They either don't understand, or they are being played, or they're complicit. But one way or the other, all of this is for naught. There is not going to be a Trump negotiated peace.
No.
The best thing, look, if Zelensky can somehow, and the Europeans can somehow maneuver a ceasefire, I could maybe see that happening. And of course, Trump takes credit for it and all the rest of it. Trump's good at Trump. But giving up what is being negotiated for without having the Russians have to fight for it would be disastrous.
Right.
Because, again, one of the other things is that I was saying that, if you get past this fortified line out in Donbass, this last little sliver of Donbass, which is their primary defensive line, if that is just ceded to them, then there's open field all the way basically to Kiev. And it is not like the Donbass. It is not sloping fields. It is flat. And it is cornfields, or sunflower seed, or sunflower fields. It's these flattened agricultural areas, and that's going to be a lot harder to defend against. Not that the Ukrainians, of course, the Ukrainians are going to fight to the end, but they know they're not going to give up that defensive line, and so it's the whole thing is just,
it's absurd,
so deeply cynical. And
well, and again,
it's unfortunate that we find ourselves here.
In looking at how Trump is acting these days, I think maybe certainly in 2017 through 2020, by and large, Trump, or 2016 through 2020, and then maybe even in the campaign last year, Butler, I think he did have a more transactional, bullish Russian attitude, but the way he's talking about it, he's like, he keeps saying, "I thought this would be the easy one," right? That's a weird thing he keeps going back to. Not that like, I have a relationship with Putin. I thought he can't lay it off on him. He can't go, "I thought it'd be easy because Putin said, as soon as you get elected, I'm going to help you, blah, blah, blah." That's why. But now it's obviously not the case, and he's been had. And so he's said a couple of things as he gets pissed off. He'll swear occasionally, or he'll say, "I'm being, Putin's tapping me along." So his awareness is coming from that. But there are definitely people around him, Vance and others, who are steering him to a pro-Russian stance whenever he gets shaky. And it was really telling at the lunch with Zelensky, where where Vance is like, as Trump's reading the statement about what a great hero Zelensky is, what a great leader he is, what he's been through, and all this stuff. And Vance is literally looking over and scowling at Trump and what he's reading. So they're corralling him. I think,
And Hegseth is in a Russian tie.
yeah, right. Yeah. So this idea that he's still on board 100%, I think is failing, because I think one thing, like I said, he can't be shamed, but he can be embarrassed, and I think he finds this embarrassing, and that his former friend is making him look like a dope. And now he doesn't need Putin's money anymore because of crypto or whatever shit that he's convinced himself he's got coming, or Saudi money, which they have coming in, right? So he's got his nest is feathered. So now he doesn't have to rely on Putin to do this, and the only thing that keeps him in line would be compromise of some sort, the PP tape or worse, or copies of the Epstein stuff, which is possible, I suppose. But it seems increasingly that Trump is genuinely flummoxed, like an asshole who's playing 3-card money and going, I don't understand. I won the last 3. How does he have my rent money? He's acting like that now. It's particularly that's a change that has happened in him in the last period of time. And again, I think the people around him are elbowing him towards, whenever he brings up tomahawks because it seems like a good idea, they'll elbow him away from it. Hegseth specifically. Hegseth shut off the Ukraine aid, without permission, without direction.
Without even telling him.
Right. And Trump had to turn it back on because it's congressionally paid for. It's still congressionally paid for. And it's still in there. And they still have to send a certain amount of it because for the next year and a half. So I think his brain is tapioca now, and I think he just doesn't know how to process any of this. I don't think he has any idea where this is going, and he's just get it over with. He falls into that category. He does this. He did it with Gaza too. We've got peace in the Middle East. I'm done. Right? And his whole deal making strategy is, I'll walk away from the table. That's it, right?
And there's another thing. There's another thing about him that hasn't changed. I think it's always been this way. Is that he thinks he's the Don.
Mm-hmm.
He in a mafia state, he thinks he's the Don.
You're right.
And when in a negotiation with Zelensky in particular, he is incredibly frustrated at somebody who isn't going to recognize that you are more powerful than me, so that when you snap your fingers, I must obey. And he's talking to a man who has had at least 7 assassination squads in the Capitol trying to kill him.
Yeah.
If he's not afraid of Putin, he's not going to be afraid of Trump.
Right.
So when Trump snaps his fingers as the Don, because I am the president of the United States,
right,
imbued with, it's enormous power, as the saying goes in the Lincoln movie, just get it done, sort of thing. Well, it doesn't work like that, Donnie.
Yeah.
It doesn't. That might work in a smoky room, in some whatever mafioso movie, take your pick.
Yeah.
But the world doesn't work like that, and the Ukrainians in particular don't work like that. And it's yes, the United States is more powerful than Ukraine. Ukraine needs the assistance of the United States, but not at the expense of our freedom and our future. And he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that at all. That doesn't compute with him, that he can't just say, I'm the big guy, you're the smaller guy, do what I want you to do.
Right.
And I think maybe that also plays into why he has the affinity to Putin, because Putin's another big guy. So why wouldn't you, if you don't want to get roughed up, nice little country there you got, Zelensky, it'd be a shame if something happened to it, sort of thing. And again, it doesn't. Neither Putin or Trump understand that the Ukrainians they're not just fighting for. I mean, they are, but they're not just fighting for their homes and their neighbors, or they are fighting for the idea that
Mm-hmm.
might doesn't make right. You can't just go into a neighbor's country and say, "I'm bigger than you, so
Right.
you're going to give me this." That goes against. I mean, we've gone through centuries of that. I mean, that's
Right.
what ostensibly the First and the Second World War were all about,
Mm-hmm.
was the idea that you can't just march into your neighbor because you're
And the
bigger.
Mongols and the Byzantine
Um,
Empire and the Ottoman Empire and
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, the list is long.
Yeah.
Um, and another reason why we are the exception, another reason why the speed letter is my North
Mm-hmm.
Star. Because at least we are trying to do something different
Yeah.
than what has gone before us for centuries.
Yeah.
And Trump has been the worst, I think, one of the, if not the
Yeah.
worst attacks on that project and that mentality that we've seen in the United States. I mean, obviously, we should all be troubled by it.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens if the American project fails? Then we
Mm-hmm.
do go to the alternative, which is, you know, as he writes in the speed letter, if you guys ever get control, meaning MAGA or the Know Nothings or the
Mm-hmm.
Confederacy or the KKK or the Native movement, or take your pick, they've always been with the United States of America. But
Yeah.
what he says in that letter is, if those guys ever actually get in control and take control of the country, then why not just chuck it all in and just say, we
Right.
are a country of power and binary,
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and all things are transactional. And if I'm big and you're small, well, then tough. If
Right.
you're a minority,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want to throw we got issues, tons of issues we need to work on in our own country. But
Mm-hmm.
the Russians don't even attempt
Right. Well,
to
I mean,
look at their own.
okay. Yeah, and I refuse to be like in the constant gardening of everything from political to social to racial issues that a democracy based on pluralism and secularism has to go through just to stay in functioning power, just to work and work for as many people as it possibly can all the time. That I refuse to be like lectured at by a country that just legalized domestic violence. Not not criminalizing it, legalizing it, taking the action to say it is the pro.
Hey,
Hey, your power came on. Look at that. Ah, Olga right there.
there we
There you go.
go.
It's better
Good
now.
old Olga.
Yeah.
She's got her fairy lights going on again. Great.
Yeah.
So that was roughly about 3 hours without electricity.
Okay.
Could have been worse.
Yeah, it could have absolutely a lot worse. So again, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. And I want to remind everybody on the edge now that you can see it kind of lit up in the background. On the edge is Phil's show. It's on Sundays, and we'll talk about who the next guest is, and for the next episode. But like I want to say too that the chat is like, yay, there's power, and Slava Ukraine and all that stuff, and so I refuse to be, and I think this is crucial and probably the easiest pushback for whenever a maggot brings up their Russian talking points. You're like, first of all, they've got no Second Amendment and they never will. So fuck you. Stop trying to create a bastion of freedom out of them. Secondly, they just passed a bill actively legalizing domestic violence, not making not carving it out and saying we're not going to prosecute it or not making it illegal. They actively chose to make it a legitimate way of dealing with things. And they're like I Telegram, while it may be down in Russia, not off in the rest of the world. And because of the channels that I subscribe to on there that are all largely either Russian or Ukrainian, um, I get to occasionally watch videos posted of Russian soldiers coming back from the front and stabbing their whole family to death. Like that posted yesterday. The guy came back. He'd been at the front for maybe 8 months. Came back,
Yeah.
killed his whole family on video. He stabs his wife. He lines the kids up in his living room, stabs her, and then attacks the person filming. And then the record of it shows that he killed the rest of his family afterwards. Um, this is if you legalize beating someone, no matter who they are, then it ratchets up the possibility that shit like that happens anyways. Sometimes that will happen, but it broadens what's acceptable in interacting with people so viciously. It's just, and it's unfathomable to me. So like, again, anytime a maggot comes to me about like, well, Ukraine can't win and Russia should blah blah, look, they just legalized domestic violence and they have no Second Amendment. If you want to live like that, fucking move there with those like dipshits who go there like, we're going to Russia for real freedom from pride parades, and then the husband gets snatched up and sent to the front lines and has not been heard from since June. For the record, that dude. Like that one dude was in the big story. That was the big story.
Well, they genuinely believe that the concept of inalienable rights, of human rights, of the fact that you
absurd.
Are born a human, so you should be treated differently than a goat or a chicken or a cow. You are grist for the mill.
Yeah.
That this concept you are born, they are very much of the idea that the state grants you or you take by force rights, that you don't come out of the womb with this wonderful brain that's been given to us and self-sentience that we have. And I mean, it literally is the antithesis of the American project. And so it has bothered me. It bothered me before the Ukraine war launched. It bothered me when I lived in Moscow in the 1990s. This is an ideology that is regressive, and it's antithetical to what the Age of Enlightenment and then our founding fathers brought forth, and we are still trying to do. We fail so many times. We come short of our own aspirations, but again, at least we try. What the Russians tell their people, and the Russians would have us, the globe, function by, is a system of basically might makes right. If you are bigger or stronger, and the priority is not the. I mean, I just did you watch last week's episode? Any chance, Hal? With Anton Timoshenko.
I have not watched
the stand-up comic.
Yeah.
One of the things. Well, no, it's okay. It's okay. One of the things we discussed is the fact that we didn't get into it as in depth as I would have liked. In retrospect, I would have delved deeper into this. But we touch upon the fact that stand-up comedy is absolutely contradictory to how Russians see their place within society.
Right.
Obviously, they're always outliers. But the idea that you would stand up by yourself with a microphone and talk to a bunch of people about your observations of what you see around you and the country that Moscow has built and the Kremlin and the Russian Orthodox Church, and say, these are my thoughts on our country, our society, that is dangerous, and it is seen as self-indulgent. The Russians think we are pampered little self-indulgent individualists. That it is the state that matters. Go back to the Soviet Union and look at their space program, which yes did lionize the first man in space, but they turned him into a postage stamp, basically, and it was always that he was a hero of the motherland. The motherland had actually been the one that put him into space. So the individual doesn't matter. The state matters. Look at the propaganda of their space program when they were talking about like our glorious state. We will move in as a collective. We will move into the future and spread throughout the universe. Very different concept, which is kind of like exploration and well, anyhow, I don't. That's it's tricky
Well, there's
territory because
for
that
all
gets very, very
mankind,
nuanced.
one giant.
But
The
right, but
American
this
system going like
right,
for all
right,
mankind, where
exactly.
which there's like no, no,
Perfect
no,
point.
no,
Yeah,
no, no,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's why stand up comedy to them is so. It is not an art form that is rarely practiced. In Russia, it's always you're either buffoonery or clowns or kind of vaudeville or even if you are like a one man up there on the stage, you're doing very performative kind of like
right,
set up
right,
punchline, what of course hacks do in the United States as well. But what they don't do is they don't have guys like Anton going, you know, what is this with all the corruption in our country? And like, doesn't,
right,
I like pointing
yeah.
out things and saying and
They have
seeing and
comics.
saying
They have
things
comics. They don't
that
have
make people kind of
comedians.
uneasy, but they have their own voice.
Yeah.
That's another good way of putting it. And that's, I think it's another, and again, it's the reason why we created the show is to exemplify the character of the Ukrainian people, just on
Hmm.
its own merit, but also in contradiction to what Russia, because they don't want that.
Yeah.
Ukrainians don't want that. They don't want their individualism and their voices being stifled. And Moscow will stifle their voices. I mean,
Hmm.
they outlawed their language for centuries. They wouldn't allow Ukrainians to speak or write in
Hmm.
their own language, and it survived. But they
Yeah.
just again, it all goes back to the point, and this is something that leaders in the West, and then it's not just Trump, although Trump in particular, um, the Ukrainians have fundamentally changed since Maidan 2014, and that was a long time coming. They tried it again. They tried it first in the Orange Revolution, and their guy was poisoned, for goodness
Hmm.
sake, by the Russians. And then they had Maidan, and it's just I would highly recommend listening to the Ukrainians themselves. If I'm a Western leader, listen to the voices of these people. This is a country unlike a lot because they have just come through a traumatic period of colonization, and
Hmm.
to approach them as Trump does with this, I'm the big guy. I'm the big empire, the American empire. I'm going to tell you, the little guy, what to do. Well, that just strikes right to the bone of their anger and frustration at having been colonized.
Hmm.
It's the exact opposite approach to say to
Right.
them, you must do what. Well, that's what Moscow did to them for centuries. They will.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing that the Russian, the critics say, oh, we're fighting in Ukraine we're fighting Russia to the last Ukrainian. Is a complete lack of understanding of who the Ukrainian people are. They're they're willing to fight because they
Hmm.
know that what if they go back to being a colony, it's going to be horrible again.
Right.
So to approach them with this kind of attitude that Trump is doing,
Well,
then there's a couple of others, but I think the Europeans are actually getting on board.
yes.
I think the Europeans are starting to get it, and they're speaking to Zelensky as an equal, as a not only an equal, but as somebody who's shown extreme courage and fortitude as representative of his people.
Right.
So the Europeans are getting it, but the United States, not just Trump, but Trump in particular, because he's the president, he's the
Hmm.
commander in chief, he's the executive. Um, he's approaching Zelensky the absolute wrong way, and again, I don't know if that's on purpose or not, because I don't. I as much as people say Trump wants his Nobel Prize and all the rest of it, Trump more than anything else wants to stay in good graces with Putin.
Right.
So it, it's I think this whole thing, again, not just to wrap it uh, round again. I don't think this is genuine. I don't think there is a genuine peace process happening in Ukraine.
Yeah.
I
I
think
I
there's a lot of
I think there's
slow
games.
walking
There's a lot
and
of gamesmanship both within the White
games.
House and around it.
Yeah.
And here's Trump saying the the statement that pissed off, I guess, Lavrov and those
is
guys.
now on hold.
I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time, so I'll see what happens. But we did all of these great deals, great peace deals. They're all peace deals. They're agreements, solid agreements, every one of them. But this one, and I said, go to the line of battle, or the battlefield lines, and you pull back and you go home, and everybody take some time off, because you got two countries that are killing each other. Two countries that are losing 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers a week.
Trump said nothing.
Yeah, so that was the line. You're right. It's just stupid. It's so painfully stupid.
It's just so dumb.
Go to the battle lines and then go home and take some time off. Like, again, he has no connection to any kind of existential threat or anything that isn't transactional. He doesn't understand. He's incapable. So I can't understand, like, the nature of Hamas. You know, Hamas has to keep fighting until there is no more Israel, or they have all been martyred. They take that seriously. It's fucking insane, but they're serious about it. It's not like it's not a chip on the table that they're using. And the same thing is true of Russia. Like, especially at this point, there may have been a transactional thing to be had early on in the war at some point. I doubt it, but let's just play that game. There certainly isn't now, because having expended this much, like, blood and treasure for, for fucking no return at all. Like, arguably a shrinking return all the time. An area that they can't keep once they take it without having to kill civilians all the time. There's no way to, like, walk this back. Like, they are in it. They're going to proceed on until they are stopped. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, he might Putin. Look, as we've discussed previously, one of the problems is that if the war stops tomorrow, Putin is in real trouble. Because he didn't get anything of significance throughout all of, 1.3 casualties, and he really didn't. As a matter of fact, Russia's worse off than when it started, because while they may have taken territory, they've lost control of the Black Sea, which is integral to their aspirations to become a great naval power, which was set down in 1721.
Yeah,
and it's Peter the Great. It's Peter the Great, and whatever, when he died in 1721 or whatever it was, saying we Russia must become a great naval power, and they've tried to make that aspiration come true for centuries. And not only have they not furthered that cause, they've had two of their major bases lost. They don't control the Black Sea anymore, and they don't control the Baltic anymore. That's two of their four fleets. This would be a humiliating defeat for Putin if he can if Trump and Putin can strong arm or think. Well, it's not going to happen, but they clearly seem to be thinking that if they can strong arm him into giving up those vital defensive lines in some sort of negotiated deal. Well, it's in the oblast, it's in the province, it's part of that land. So they should get all those hard defensive lines that you've been building for 10 years, just because maps on a line or lines on a map say this is part of Donbass. He could maybe sell that to his people with the tacit understanding that we're going to stop for now, but eventually, we will be back for more, because this is unacceptable. I mean, they cannot. Well, again, I'm repeating myself from previous conversations we have, but their two primary goals, Putin's in particular, but Moscow's in general, they must control Kiev and make it a government that is friendly to Moscow, and they must take control of Odessa so that they control the north shore of the Black Sea, so that they can basically have dominion over their warm water port in Crimea.
Right.
Those are by leaps and bounds their primary goals, and they're nowhere near either one of them. So he's got, and they're not going to get it. They're not in this current phase, not in this war. But if Trump and Putin can strong arm Zelensky into giving up those fortifications, there's nothing to stop them from doing it, or just continually threatening Kiev and trying to intimidate Kiev. And all of these scenarios indicate that Trump and Putin don't understand Ukraine.
Right.
The Europeans are starting to learn who the Ukrainians are as a people,
right?
Because they live with them now. They live with them. There are lots of Ukrainian diaspora in Europe. It's right on their front door. So those who are paying attention, because it is so regional and right on the doorstep, they are paying attention. But even still, I have European friends who are like, is that still going on? Is that geez, and it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Well, part of that,
and Trump is not going to be part of the solution.
No, he's going to be an ongoing part of the problem, and largely because in an effort to hide the Epstein files, he is trying to just flood the zone with bullshit and be everywhere all at once, trying to look like a peacemaker with these like half-assed memos that he's tossing all over the globe and claiming that the Pakistanis and the Indians didn't go to nuclear war and destroy the earth because he threatened them with trade, which is just fucking garbage. But one of the things that Trump did bring up is that he finally mentioned the Russian economy being, dangerously close to possibly collapsing. At one point, he just flippantly said it. And I think what happens is, we've seen this with him before, which he'll, like, at a lot of his rallies, he would repeat whatever was said just as he was walking up the stairs, essentially, like it was gospel, just because he wants to be ahead of the like, his own ego makes it so that he wants people to think he knows more than they do, and he'll say, Abe Lincoln was a Republican. Most people don't know that because he just found it out in the fucking green room, right? He does that kind of shit, right? And so Russia's GDP growth, and I'll show you this real quick. Russia's GDP growth projected for 2025 is forecasted 1.2%, down from 4.3% in 2024. All of that is still military growth. That is not them not creating more phones or, and I'm sure there's an element of oil production. This is the strikes by the Ukrainians of oil and gas facilities, for example, I'm sure is a part of this. But basically they just drag shit out of the ground and sell it on the open market. This is not a country that innovates and provides services and technology for the rest of the world. It just does not. Could it? Absolutely. I mean, they used to have a very viable space program because they used to trust and care for their engineers and that kind of stuff, and now they're sending them to the fucking front lines with a cardboard gun. But 1.2%, down from 4.3 projected in 2024. Mm-hmm. Industrial production is growing by 0.8%. They're on a war footing. Like they are, and they're losing. Like they're fighting a smaller country and they're getting their ass handed to them, and their industrial base is effectively shrinking by that minimal growth part. So Vasily Astrov, a Russian expert at the Institute, said the main reason for the slump in growth is Russian central banks' overly restrictive monetary policy, which is adorable. But this is the part that's saying its key interest rate is at 17%. Imagine that. Like, people were flipping the fuck out and saying, our economy's going to grind to a fucking halt at 6%. 17%. Now, it's down from 21, but it's still, like, it's gone from, nearly impossible to impossible, or vice versa. Like, it's gone from impossible to nearly impossible. It's gone from impossible for everyone to impossible for everyone except the people that don't need to borrow money. Like, it's ridiculous.
Meanwhile, Ukraine just today passed in the Rada, the parliament here, their projected 2026 budget, which by most analyst prognosis or expectations say that their growth is going to be around 2%. Mm-hmm. So basically double what the Russians are doing,
Yes.
So now, mind you, they're getting massive financial support from the West, but still,
well,
nevertheless, they're managing a budget that's going to see growth.
Some of that is coming from, them selling drones or building drone facilities to sell to Europe and weapon systems. So again, they're going to become a marketplace for a lot of this shit, which is what that province largely was during the USSR. Ironically, it just could be turned back into that because they still have the brain trust that was there, and all the people who would do that kind of stuff that were in Russia initially have fled Russia. Like, unless you have your brain shackled and be turned into a brain slave for the state. And so, but it should come as no surprise that the Kremlin has rejected Trump's view that the Russian economy could collapse. Gee, really? You think they would say that? All right. We're at the bottom of the hour, and I remind everybody to check out On the Edge, Phil's show, subscribe to his channel on YouTube. In all of this, we're trying a rising tide lifts all boats kind of an attitude about subscriptions and that kind of stuff. So when you watch the show, one of the things you can also do for his show is write a comment, because that, especially in posted videos, it does have an impact on where it goes as far as its reach. That's true of my videos, but it's certainly true of shows like On the Edge, where they preload them. It was never a live stream. It makes a huge difference in the audience.
Here.
So yeah.
Yes, please. And I completely understand why you haven't watched it yet. But
yeah, I will.
If you can take the time, watch last week's episode. It's one of our best because again, we touch on all of these different topics. How to create art, how to make people laugh amongst immense tragedy, and the importance of humor in times of tragedy. And Anton was a fantastic guest, and I really hope people would listen to him, because we created the channel to give to platform voices like his. So go check it out. Stand-up comedy in Ukraine and what that's all about during war.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Phil. Greatly appreciate it. Be safe.
And if one of these days you're coming over, one of these days you're going to come over here and perform. No, one of these days we're going to get you in a comedy club over here.
Damn straight. Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it, brother. Okay. Be safe. All right. We'll see you on Saturday.
Always a pleasure. We'll talk on Saturday. All right. Take care.
All right. Bye. And it's nice that he's got power again. And chat room, thank you for sticking with us today and giving the greatest gift you can possibly give, which is, of course, your eyeballs. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/houseparks is a great way to do it. And then you get a free comedy show every month because of it, because I live stream my Flapper show. If I'm in your area and you want to come see me perform live, you and a guest come as a Patreon. So as I get out on the road more on my own and with Nerd Halen, that's available to you guys as well as a perk. And then, of course, super chats and stars and all that kind of stuff are always welcome, and I greatly appreciate it. But the best thing of all is you guys could do the free stuff. Subscribe, hit that like, comment on stuff, and it'll greatly help us spread the show out and reach a lot of people. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else, and I will see you guys this afternoon. I'm going to start a half hour early this afternoon because Summer still got her work stuff that I'm chaperoning on, and I'm gonna have to leave at 4:30 instead of 5 to be out the door because of. Do you believe they actually think that there's traffic here in Vegas? It's hilarious. The Sphere thing was great. I'll give you a whole rundown this afternoon. We'll talk about the Wizard of Oz at the Sphere show. I recommend it. I do. It's crazy and quirky, and there's a lot of, like, you could tell it's like all I could say is, while I was watching it and I enjoyed it thoroughly, all I could think was, they need to do Rocky Horror. Just saying. That would be so crazily awesome at the Sphere. Like, as much as, like, audiences, would come and see and have been coming to see, the ticket sales are great and stuff for the Wizard of Oz. I gotta say, Rocky Horror done the way they do it there, which is this kind of interactive 4D thing with wind and leaves blowing through and stuff like that. Like, the tornado sequence is amazing. If they, like, the way people show up, holy shit, it would be awesome. Yes, we'll raid Boston Brian. He's on after us, right? Is he up right after us? We will absolutely do that. All right, I'll let you guys go, and I will see you this afternoon. Again, I will be on half hour early. So just, heads up. Let everybody know. Do I not have, like, great ideas all the time? I mean, oh, he already ended? Oh, okay, sorry. He just finished. Silly boy. He needs to do it now. He needs to do 11 o'clock show, and then we can roll straight into it. There you go. Anyways, much love, and I will see you guys later. The flying monkeys were inflatable. It was hilarious, but they were great. All right, I'll see you guys later. Where'd my button go? There it is. Thank you guys so much. Super chat's always welcome, and Venmo is right there in case you want to buy me a cup of coffee. Take a picture of that with your phone, and if you use Venmo, you can send me a gift, support the show.